Welcome to our session, The Intersection of Equity and Teacher Leadership for the 2021 North Carolina Beginning Teacher Summit. I would first like to start off by introducing my co-presenter, also my husband, Mr. Guy Hill. He is an English teacher at Triton High School in Harnett County. He's also involved in a lot of teacher leadership opportunities through the state.
And my wife is Angela McCall Hill. She is a former teacher, a former assistant principal, and a former principal in Harnett County Schools, as well as a former principal of a charter school in Cumberland County. She currently works as an instructional coach for Fayetteville State University in the Fayetteville Cumberland County region, and works with 2 or 3 counties.
And so welcome. I am looking forward, and I'm sure Guy is as well, as working with you. We're going to do our best to give you information. We hope you learn as much as you can. Also, just know that we're here to support you. So we do have ways that you can follow up with us after this presentation. If you will look at the bottom of your screen where the rug is, you will see a bit.ly link. And on that bit.ly link, you'll be able to access all the resources. We have links within our presentation. So if you want to go ahead and get that information now, you can copy that down, and then you will have the information for our presentation.
There are several objectives that we will cover in this session. So there's several things that we want you and hope that you get from this presentation. We hope you get an understanding of the concept of equity in education. We hope you leave with strategies for engaging students, your colleagues, and supervisors in difficult conversations surrounding equity. We want you to know of educational organizations and state policies in North Carolina who advance the work surrounding equity. And we also are going to leave you with a list of resources to help you continue your equity journey, your journey into equity, which we hope you participate in for your entire career in education. You will apply this to your classroom, hopefully by finding your voice in education, as well as your personal voice. And sometimes those two things intersect, as well as learn ways to discuss difficult issues and controversial topics with your colleagues and with your administrators and supervisors. And hopefully, you will also take away from this presentation how to advocate for all the students that you teach. This session, in this session, we will cover several teaching standards from the North Carolina Professional Teaching Standards. One of those teaching standards is Standard 1, where teachers demonstrate leadership. So you will definitely learn how to demonstrate leadership in your school and in your county. Uh, Teaching standard number 2, teachers establish a respectful environment for a diverse population of students. Our county and our state is becoming more and more diverse. And so we as teachers and educators need to be aware of how to address the diversity in our schools so it becomes a strength and not a weakness. And also teaching standard number 5, which is teachers reflect on their practice. Of course, reflection on your practice is very important, especially for growth. And there's always room to grow as educators as things constantly change. And we can constantly adapt to those changes, as we, of course, have seen through this pandemic.
And so we are going to start with an equity check-in because we don't know where to go unless we know where we're starting. So there is a link that's on the document that we shared on the bit.ly for equity check-in. I will go to it quickly just to illustrate for you what you can expect to see on your Jamboard. So on the Jamboard, you will see that there is a vertical line that talks about context, and then a horizontal line for understanding. And as you move out, you'll see the data section, information, knowledge, and wisdom. And so when it comes to equity, do you have knowledge around the data of discussing equity and what equity looks like? Do you have information, like, do you know what it means? When equity, when you see it and when you don't? Then you move to the knowledge section of how do you define equity, or how does it show up for you? And then the wisdom is when you start asking questions why. So on the left-hand side, you'll see that there's different ways that you could document where you are. I like the sticky note. So if you click on the sticky note, you can pick the color that you like, and then you can type your name. You can save it, go ahead and cancel, because there's only one of you most likely in the setting that you're attending the session. And then you can move to wherever you feel like you are. So we are going to give you 3 minutes to do this. So we will set the timer, and then when the timer goes off, you can join us back here for our next slide. So this is just a self-assessment. All right. So the next item we wanted to share with you is Cornell Notes. I'm unsure if you've heard of it or not, but it is a way that you're able to take quick notes about the key thoughts and takeaways from the topic that you are learning about in a lecture. And so there's a space for you to put keywords and questions as well as a summary. And so the link to the Cornell Notes is on your previous document with links. So on that document, you'll have the link to this. So we would love for you to give it a try if it's something you might want to use for this session, as well as what you might want to use for your classroom. I'm now going to turn it over to Guy, and he's going to talk to you a little bit more about equity.
So equity and equality are two somewhat different concepts. Equity is the quality of being fair and impartial. Equity in education means that personal or social circumstances are not obstacles to students when accessing instruction and achieving their educational potential. So you see the picture there, it's a cartoon, and it addresses equality versus equity. With equality, every student, every participant has the same thing. And in the second image, individuals are given different supports so they can have access to whatever it is they need access to, which in this case is a baseball game. But where we want to be is equity, where in the third image, all three of the participants, in this case, in our case, as educator students, all three of the students are able to equally access and participate in the system, and there is no systemic barriers that prevent them from accessing what needs to be accessed. So another thing that I want to address with equity is when you see situations in your school or in your school system in which equity is not present, what can you do about it? So there was a time in the school that I teach, Triton High School, when there was uh, quite a bit of inequity in the honors and AP classes that we teach at Triton High School. There was a uh, there were not that many students of color, African American students, Hispanic students in those honors and AP courses. So we did an initiative where we took it upon ourselves to address that problem by encouraging teachers to encourage students of color to involve themselves in honors and AP courses. To take those courses, sign up for those courses, we looked at their test scores, which many times those students tested very well, but somehow were not encouraged to go into those classes. We also looked at students of low socioeconomic status and tried to get them involved in honors AP courses as well. So what happened was in about a 2 or 3 year span, we doubled the number of students of color in those honors and AP courses. And so that is the kind of that is an example of how we address inequity or attempt to address inequity in our school. So now we move to the two mom scenario, in which so there is a link for you to click so you can look at the two mom scenario and think about how you would address that situation.
And just to let you guys know, you will have 6 minutes to complete the reading of it. So just go ahead and start reading, and the timer will let you know when your 6 minutes are up.
And we're back. So hopefully you had time to read the scenario, and we just want you to consider 2 points. Often, when somebody thinks children of a certain age are not old enough to talk about an issue, whether related to race or sexual orientation or any other identity, they are thinking primarily of children from privileged identities. In this case, Denise already is beginning to experience bias from her peers. It is likely that she has witnessed her mother's experiencing bias as well. As a general rule, we might say that if students are old enough to express or experience bias or injustice, they are old enough to talk about that bias or injustice. These conversations can occur as early as preschool. And of course, those of you who are parents, you understand that whenever children ask questions, you really have to answer them because you're the teacher, you're the educator, you are most equipped to answer their questions. You have the knowledge, so don't be afraid to have those conversations with your students. Also, it might not always be possible to completely avoid conflict and controversy if we are fully committed to creating and sustaining a bias free, equitable, and just classroom environment. This is because doing so requires us to respond to the kinds of situations to which Ms. Riviera was responding in this case. One measure of a school's commitment to ensuring an equitable learning environment is its persistence to that commitment, even in the face of controversy. So don't be afraid of controversy. Just be very careful when you address it.
All right, and so now we're going to move into that part that Guy was just mentioning about standing during controversy. And a lot of the controversies that you are going to witness and be a part of will have to involve difficult conversations for change to happen. And so I just kind of wanted to talk about the different components that make a conversation difficult. So it starts with this differing perception. And so there's a perception difference between those that you're having a conversation with. In that example, you know that there was a differing perception amongst the parents and what the teacher was doing, because that's what caused the conflict. Also, the assumption about the intent. A lot of times when we're having conversations that are difficult, we assume certain things. And so one of the examples that's just prevalent right now is the conversation about Black Lives Matter versus those that believe that and say all lives matter. And so the intent of Black Lives Matter isn't that of the movement isn't that Black lives are more important than any other lives. It's right now at this moment, we are in need of a voice. We are in need of help. And so that is the Black Lives Matters position. And not the intent that all lives do not matter. And so that's an example of this assumption about intent. And that brings about feelings of people, people feeling like they're not as important. So those that say like all lives matter, it's kind of this feelings of, I'm not important. And so feelings get involved. And then there's the blame piece. I'm not causing Black people to be killed. I'm not doing that part. So I really don't know what the problem is. And so all these things, and that was just one example of some of the things that are happening in our nation. The blame, the feelings, and assumptions about intent and different perceptions can lead us into these difficult conversations that we have. And so I wanted to share 6 tools that could really help you create a safe environment to have these difficult conversations. And so having difficult conversations is something that we'll do as educators. And so this is taken from a book about having difficult conversations. And so that is referenced in one of your resources, so if you'd like to check it out to read more. But the first tool is make it safe to talk. So create an environment that you are welcoming others in to share their thoughts and their feelings about the topic that's so difficult to discuss. And that could look as simple as maybe not having it in your classroom, but maybe having it in a neutral space where both groups feel comfortable, because some parents don't feel comfortable coming to school or being called to the principal's office, just like teachers don't feel like it's comfortable being called there. So make it in a safe environment. The second tool is just listen. A lot of times when you don't know what to say or how to handle it, listen. That's why, the saying says you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so listen more. So listen, and don't just listen to make your next point. Listen for understanding, and then feel free to say, am I correct in hearing you say, and restating it so the person that you're talking to knows you're listening to them. The third tool is take the yes and stance. So think about when you're talking with them and you receive what they've said and you say, yes, I understand what you're saying, and I would like to make you aware of this. But conversations at yes and, they use it in improv, it continues a conversation. Using the words no and but really puts an end to a true conversation. It's just more of one person talking and the other person having to listen. The fourth tool is recognizing your story. So no coming into a situation if you feel uncomfortable about the topic. If you've worked at a school before where maybe your first year teaching, you work somewhere different than your second year teaching, and you know that you didn't feel supported. So that might be part of your story. So know your story, know your areas that you feel that really bother you. You know, with certain people use certain words, you know, that's like a trigger for you. So know it and be able to recognize it. So hopefully that can keep the emotion out of it. The fifth tool is use the I message. So really think about when you're using the I message, I feel hurt when I hear you say that I'm not a good teacher because I shared something that you felt I should not have shared at students. And what I need is for you to understand why I did what I did. It was to make another student feel comfortable in the room. And so using those I messages really takes it away from being confrontational with those you're speaking with. And then the last tool is really think of it as a contribution and not blaming. So as you have these conversations, really think about what that family member might be able to contribute to the conversation or what the other staff member could contribute to understanding, and not really blaming. Because once we start blaming, we really start to get back into the feelings part, and nothing good happens. We just kind of stay in this cycle. So these are 6 tools that you could possibly use in that 2 mom scenario that we just went over. And so at this point, what we would like for you to do is take the next 7 minutes, and we're breaking these times up for you because we really want you to do the work while you're in the presentation. Because as you know, with students, if you don't give them independent practice and guided practice, what you taught might not be fully comprehended. So we're giving you this opportunity, 7 minutes, on how you would handle this equity conversation now based off of those 6 tools that we shared with you. And so if you would like to share it through writing, you would click on this link here and it would take you to a Google document. And so you would just list at least 2 of the tools that you use for the conversation. If you don't want to go there and you're like, I think I might just want to talk about it and upload a video, you're able to go to our shared Google Drive and you will be able to upload a video to this drive, and the directions are in the link right here. And so we are going to start our 7 minutes, and please take this time. We would really like to hear back from you. We will respond to all the responses in the Google document. So if you leave your email, we'll do it there. If not, we'll just address it in the document and then you can go back and look at it. Guy, did you have anything to add before I turn them loose? All right. Okay, I'm going to start the timer.
Can't add to perfection, dear.
All right, we cannot wait to read and watch your videos. So I hope you took that time to do that. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to Guy, and he's going to share some educational policies impacting the equity conversations in our state.
So thank you, Angela. So one of the most recent and potentially most powerful conversation about equity is Governor Roy Cooper's Executive Order 113, which is the development of the DRIVE Task Force. DRIVE stands for Developing a Representative and Inclusive Vision for Education. And this order was signed on December 10th, 2019. And so the main thing that this order has attempted to address is the lack of teachers of color in education in North Carolina. And so that is the main thing that order attempts to address. With that order, which is there's a link to the order in the presentation. And with this order, the DRIVE Task Force is developed, of which I am a member of the DRIVE Task Force, along with several great educators across the state of North Carolina. So we've been working very diligently, very hard in the last year and a half through this pandemic with trying to put together a report and policies and things that counties, school systems, individual schools can do to address the problem of not having very many teachers of color in their state, in their county, in their city. And so there's also a link to the DRIVE Task Force report, which was presented to Governor Roy Cooper in December of 2020. So that is there for you. The DRIVE Task Force is divided into 3 subcommittees. Recruitment, which I was co-chair of that subcommittee, preparation and support and retention. And you can find more information about those subcommittees also in the report. Each subcommittee had specific bullet points in the report that addressed the concerns of that specific subcommittee. Educational organizations also impact the conversation around equity. NCAE is a leader in the conversation about equity in North Carolina. Of course, that stands for the North Carolina Association of Educators. They have several groups. I know they have a cohort of African American teachers. I believe there's a cohort of Hispanic teachers. And so they do quite a few things to address issues of equity. PENCE is another professional organization of educators. They do several things as well. NCETA, for all the English teachers in the house, is the North Carolina English Teachers Association. I am a member of that organization, past president of that organization. So I encourage you to be a member of your subject area professional organization and find out what they are doing in the way of equity. Many times they have speakers who speak about equity, who offer information from other states, because this is not just a North Carolina situation. This is a problem in many states across the country, especially in the South. So many times they have speakers and they bring in data to address that situation. One thing that I think all educators should know and understand very intricately when it comes to providing an equitable education for their students is know your standards. And so there's a link to the North Carolina standards for all subjects, K through 12. Hopefully you will find the subject you teach and the grade level you teach in there. Know your standards. You should know your standards inside and out like the back of your hand. And so, for example, I know that RL1, reading literature, standard number 1 is about inference and about students analyzing text and knowing implicitly and explicitly what the text says. I also know that RL2 is about theme. And it's about where the theme emerges, how the theme is refined by the text, and of course, what the theme is. So you need to know your standards uh, very intricately so you can provide those connections for your students. The third thing, not don't just be a member of professional organizations, be a leader in those organizations. Uh, be on the board of directors, run for secretary, be vice president, be president, be a part of the decision making process. It gives you great leadership experience and also puts you closer in touch with the trends in education. And also attending educational conferences through those organizations where you can continue to learn and grow. Having a growth mindset is very important as an educator. I teach night in 10th grade English. And so I teach the Holocaust, and I have been to probably about 5 or 6 workshops and seminars about the Holocaust. And every time I go, I learn some valuable, some new information that I use in my classroom to help educate my students. And so you never stop growing, and so you should seek out opportunities to continue to grow as an educator. And uh, so seek to make an impact, seek to understand what's going on around you. So 3 things I want to share about that is seek equity in your classroom. Make sure you are providing an equitable education for all of your students. Make sure you look at the data because sometimes the data gives you a different impression than you think you are making on your students. So always look at the data, see what the data tells you. You may think you are addressing the needs of a subgroup, but the data may show that maybe you're not. So don't be afraid to look at yourself. That's where growth is going to begin with self, um, and do some reflection and make sure you are exuding equity from your pores as you teach in your classroom. Seek equity in your school. If you know there are inequities in your school, seek them out. Talk to other colleagues about it over lunch, maybe. Uh, Try to figure out ways to address the problem. And like Angela said earlier, try not to blame people when you do that, but just try to seek to expand and try to help a situation that you see where students are are lacking what the resources and the access they need. And also seek equity in your district and in your county, your LEA. Sometimes you will find yourself in situations where you will be able to have a seat at the table, um, at county meetings or what have you, or you might know someone on a district level. Don't be afraid to practice what we talked about earlier in the presentation and have some uncomfortable conversations with those people around the issue of equity. Because the bottom line is, if we can provide equity or equitable ground for our students, equitable opportunities for our students, it will help the entire county, will help the entire LEA. It's not just about black, white, Hispanic, Asian. It's about all of us together as working and going to public schools. And now I'll turn the presentation over to my wife, Angela.
Thank you, Guy. So we know that we can't cover all the things in equity, and we really wanted to be in person with you, so we could have more conversation to see if there were any areas that you still wanted to learn more about. We have a bit.ly linked here as well as in our presentation about if you want to learn more. And so once you go to that site, you will see a list of equity resources, and we'll continue to add to this. And so you will see different things that you can access at this link. And we really hope that you will explore that as we move forward. So Guy, would you like to have some of the last words for our presentation?
Sure, once I unmute myself. So, so you know, I know that these conversations around equity and about race and gender and all these things can be very uncomfortable. But please understand that many of these conversations are long overdue. These problems are not going to be fixed and addressed if we avoid them and we don't talk about them. So we as educators have a long history of of being change agents all the way back to the 60s civil rights movement, and I'm sure even before then. So be a change agent. Don't be afraid. Don't let fear determine what you do. Be courageous, but be courageous in a righteous way. Um, and that's all I can encourage you to do. And I'm not telling you something I read in the book, these many books back here behind me, but I'm telling you something that I've done and I've experienced. Uh, but also, I want to say, make sure you are doing what you need to do in your classroom, because that's where all of this begins, with you in your classroom.
I agree with all of that. So the last thing I'm just going to say is just feel free to get in touch with us. If you have any questions, you need clarification, links don't work, whatever you need from us, our email addresses are listed underneath our pictures. We have enjoyed presenting for you, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Bye. Thank you for coming.